Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Ryan O'Neill.
Salih Hudayar is the National and Political Affairs Director for the East Turkestan National Awakening Movement in Washington, D.C. He was recently on the Jim Bohannon show and has done numerous TV appearances. Salih Hudayar, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the videos that I've seen on YouTube about this situation show that Communist China, the People's Republic of China, has discriminated against and been very hard on various Turkic Muslim groups in East Turkestan, and that's what your group specializes in. Can you tell us about this situation?
Yes. So since Communist China occupied East Turkestan in December of 1949, China has been virtually colonizing the region. They've settled millions of ethnic Han Chinese colonists to change the demographics, and they've been always discriminating against the Turkic peoples of East Turkestan. At first, they tried to assimilate them, and then because we were resistant to their attempts of assimilation, China has now taken drastic measures to evidently eradicate the essence of Turkic and Uyghur identity and their overall existence by locking up millions of people in concentration camps, by forcing our women to marry Chinese men, by taking our children in the hundreds of thousands and separating them from our families and taking them into government boarding schools where they are forced to denounce their ethnic and religious identity and raised as Han Chinese. China has collected the DNA samples and retina scans of over 18.8 million of our peoples between the ages of 12 and 65 under the guise of free healthcare checks and then maintaining national security, as it calls it. In the camps, people are being subject to food and sleep deprivation.
If I could stop you there, Salih, we're talking to Salih Hudayar. He's in a Washington organization that raises awareness of Chinese communists harassing and suppressing various groups, including the Muslims over there. Wanted to ask you, you mentioned Chinese communist concentration camps. Is that the same as a re-education camp? Was reading about those online.
Yes, yeah. The Chinese, they call it re-education camps, but in reality, they're concentration camps.
Do they put people to death, or is it a brainwashing situation, or both? A torture? What goes on there?
So it's both. China, in these camps, people are forced to denounce their ethnic and religious identity. They're forced to worship the Chinese Communist Party and embrace Chinese ideology. Women are being raped in these camps. Men are being sterilized. People are being subject to hunger and sleep deprivation. And then you have people that die as a result of torture, or before they die, their organs are harvested. And then the people that die in these camps, their bodies are cremated in so-called burial management facilities. So it's a actual genocide that is going on.
Talking to Salih Hudayar, he's out of Washington, D.C. Salih, the Chinese communists, you talk about them. Do other communist countries do this too? For example, do you know of this sort of thing going on in a place like, say, North Korea or Cuba? What do we know about those places?
Well, we know that in North Korea they have labor camps, they have torture and mass killings in North Korea. But as far as Cuba, I'm not too familiar about the situation in Cuba, but I don't think it's to a level where they're locking up millions of people in these concentration camps or re-education camps designed to deliberately bring about their overall destruction.
Okay, the dictatorships like Communist China, usually when a group of people are rounded up like that, propaganda is put out against them in order to justify what the state is doing. The propaganda demonizes the people who are being held and tortured. What do we know about the Chinese communist propaganda? Do they have any against the Muslims that they're harassing and imprisoning and torturing and killing in communist China? Do we have any stories about propaganda being put out against the Muslims there?
Yes, it's not just targeting Muslims. I mean, there's regardless of whatever religious faith you are, if you're a Turkic people, if you're Uyghur, if you're Kazakh or any other Turkic people, you are subject to be sent to these concentration camps. So China says that it's targeting extremism, separatism, and unpatriotic peoples. Two-faced officials. I mean, it's even targeted officials that served the Chinese Communist Party for the longest time. In fact, much of their whole lives, who happen to be Uyghur or Kazakh, under the guise that they're being two-faced, they're not loyal to the Chinese state. Even speaking your own language, even speaking Uyghur in our own homes, is a reason for us to be sent to the concentration camp, because we're not Chinese, we're not patriotic. So it's unpatriotic to speak any language other than Chinese, so we have to be re-educated. I mean, these are the type of propaganda that China puts out. To the West, they say that they call it, right now they're calling it vocational training centers, saying that they're training the poor Uyghurs to become productive members of society and get job training, whereas, the people that are being locked up include doctors, professors, people from all walks of life, businessmen. They don't need to be trained on how to manufacture toys or be in a textile factory and manufacture textiles for companies that export it to the United States or other places of the world.
Sully, the other groups who are being harassed, the non-Muslim groups, you mentioned some names there. You mentioned, I think, 3 different groups. Can you give us a breakdown of the ethnicity and religion of those groups for those who are less familiar with that section of China?
So in East Turkestan, I mean, majority of the population, about 95% of the population is Muslim. The non-Chinese population, 95% of the non-Chinese population is Muslim. So you have Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, and Tatars, which are all ethnically Turkic peoples. And amongst these populations, you have, again, some that are, majority of them are Muslim, but amongst them you have some that are Christian, some that are Buddhist, some that are shamanist, and then you might even have, in amongst the population, even Jews.
Talking with Salih Hudayar, the head of the National and Political Affairs at the East Turkestan National Awakening Movement. I see that you've had some support from U.S. Senator Tom Cotton. Wondering if you had a chance to talk to the White House yet, to President Trump or Mike Pence, the Vice President, anyone in the State Department, any other members of Congress there?
Yes, so we've, over the past several months, we've been engaging various members of Congress, including Senator Rubio, Senator Tom Cotton, Senator Lankford, Congressman Smith, Congressman McGovern. We talked to various officials in the State Department. Even we have a petition to the White House, asking them to address the situation, which over 107,000 members of our global diaspora community signed on this petition to ask the United States to address this. So we're still waiting a response. But the government hasn't really done any concrete actions yet. I mean, this has been going on for the past 2 years, and God knows how many people have already died in these camps. But still, there's no actual action, and that's really disturbing and discouraging.
Sully, it says I was reading your Twitter page, and there's a post by a Ken Roth there. It says, quote, China is the world's largest jailer of Muslims. Indonesia has the world's largest Muslim population. Why is the Indonesian government so silent about China's detention of 1 million Muslims?
So, Muslim countries are silent because of majority of world governments, especially Muslims, are silent because of their economic ties with China. China has been able to buy off the international community's silence through its economic and political influence. And this is very disturbing because China's One Belt, One Road strategy is to achieve potentially global domination, and East Turkestan is the pinnacle of this situation. And China wants to eradicate all the Turkic peoples in East Turkestan because it's the gateway to the West. So it's discouraging to see the international community continue to remain silent and complicit, especially Muslim countries, given that when it comes to the Palestinian issue or any other issues, they're all out. They'll all criticize the West immediately, but they're very silent when it comes to China. And it's because of the economic and political influence that China has over the world.
Talking to Salih Hudayar. We're going to take a quick break, check the forecast. We'll be back with more questions on this very interesting topic. Learning a lot this morning on Newsmaker Show with Salih Hudayar. Stay with us.
Ready to create your own income with your own home-based business where there's no such thing as getting laid off? If a billionaire entrepreneur spent 5 years and $20 million searching for the next big trend, wouldn't you want to know what he found? If you're serious about making money from home without having to leave home, then write this down. www.goherenext.com. You decide your income. Goherenext.com. Have you ever thought about saying goodbye to your job? Just walking into your boss and saying, I quit. And how would you like to commute to work without ever leaving your home? If a billionaire entrepreneur spent 5 years and $20 million searching for the next big trend, wouldn't you want to know what he found? If you're serious about making money from home without having to leave home, then write this down. www.goherenext.com. You decide your income. Get the facts now. GoHereNext.com.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carroll, who says it's going to get pretty cold out there.
It is, and it's also going to be fairly stormy this week, Brian. We're going to deal with a couple of areas of low pressure, one between today and Tuesday night, another one the end of the week. National Weather Service has put us under a winter storm watch from 3 a.m. tomorrow morning through 7 a.m. Wednesday morning. Storm system now gathering strength in the Plain States is going to tap into a lot of moisture down over the Ohio River Valley and send it our way. Cloudy for today, a little bit of light snow. Today's snow really doesn't accumulate much. It's well under an inch. Temperatures today about 30 to 35. We'll have periods of light snow overnight as well, and that could accumulate up to an inch by morning, 20 to 25. Tomorrow's a different story. It's a mess. Snow, it's going to mix with sleet and freezing rain tomorrow afternoon. 2 to 4 inches of an accumulation before it starts to change over, 30 to 35. It'll go back to snow late tomorrow night, lows near 30, and then we'll see some occasional light snow Wednesday, 35. Should be dry Thursday before a rainstorm heads our way with milder temperatures on Friday, Brian. Sunrise this morning was at 7:11. It'll set tonight at 5:38.
Back on the Newsmaker Show with Salih Hudayar out of the East Turkestan National Awakening Movement in Washington, D.C. Wanted to ask you, Salih, about I was reading your Twitter page, and there was some posts criticizing the Confucius Institutes in the United States. They're at different colleges and universities in America and have ties apparently to the Chinese government. What do we know about the Confucius Institute, and how does that play in with what we're talking about today?
So the Confucius Institute is virtually an institute that's funded directly by the Chinese Communist Party or the Chinese government, and it's to spread Chinese, quote, soft power. So they have exchange programs across various universities, not just in the United States, but all across the world. And, they try to censor universities from talking about issues related to East Turkestan, Tibet, Taiwan, or anything that might damage, China's, quote, interests. In this, my own personal experience back when I was studying at the University of Oklahoma, I was trying to go to a homecoming parade and represent East Turkestan at the University of Oklahoma. But our university would not allow us to do that because of pressure from the Chinese Confucius Institute. They wouldn't even let us raise the issue of East Turkestan. I've attended various Chinese Confucius Institute programs, events that they had at the university, and they would pretty much whitewash the reality of the situation in East Turkestan, in Tibet, and China as a whole.
Sully, I see one of the posts on your Twitter page talking about this section of China, East Turkestan, with over 7,900 checkpoints, over 3 million Turkic peoples in 1,200 plus concentration camps, and unknown numbers in secret prisons. China has turned all of occupied East Turkestan into a virtual prison.
Yes, right now, there's, according to the Chinese government, there's over 7,900 so-called police stations, like police checkpoints across the region. In fact, there's every 500 meters, there's a checkpoint. You have to go through that checkpoint where they scan you. Sometimes they even scan your eyes in order to get past through that checkpoint. Millions of people are in these camps, in the concentration camps, and then there's untold numbers in secret prisons. In fact, there's news that China is building prisons under the ground, or has prisons under the ground. It's pretty much made East Turkestan into a open prison. Even in our homes, you have 1.12 million Chinese officials living with us to monitor our activities and to ensure our loyalty to the Chinese state. This is something that the Chinese government openly stated in its mouthpiece, Global Times.
What about, China has a very strict abortion policy. Is that enforced in the East Turkestan section among the Muslims there?
Yes. In fact, China, according to a document that I had read a couple of years back, they've quote, prevented the illegal births of several million Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples of East Turkestan. In fact, until we could only have 2 to 3 kids. If you were in the city, you could only have 2 kids. If you were in the countryside, you had 3 kids. If anything more than that, you'd have to get forced abortion. Right now, our births amongst our population has been in decline, especially the past 2 years, because majority of our men are in these concentration camps. And then you have the Chinese forcing our women to marry ethnic Chinese men, ethnic Han Chinese men, or if you don't marry them, then your whole family is going to be sent to a concentration camp. China is virtually trying to eradicate the future existence of our people.
Some very serious issues we've been discussing today here on this Monday Newsmaker show with Salih Hudayar from the East Turkestan National Awakening Movement in Washington, D.C. Salih, what websites would you like to talk about to send our listeners to?
Well, the first website that I would like to have our listeners visit is www.nodeadsoul.com. And this website, sends an automatic letter to the president, to the trade representative, to the Secretary of State, and to members of Congress to ask them to address these issues and to help stop what is at this point a 21st century Holocaust. The second website is obviously we'd like them to visit nationalawakening.org, where they can find more information about our organization and other ways that they can help. Another website that we would like them to visit is www.bitterwinter.com. And Bitter Winter is a human rights organization that has been highlighting, reporting on the situation in East Turkestan on the ground, and not just in East Turkestan, but all the situation in China as a whole, like Tibet, East Turkestan, and China as a whole.
So nodeadsoul.com, and another website is bitterwinter.com, reading from nodeadsoul.com, and it's got pictures of these poor guys being held in some sort of prison camp situation. It says Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in September that these prisoners were being held against their will in so-called re-education camps where they're forced to endure severe political indoctrination and other awful abuses. Well, you've told us a lot this morning, Salih Hudayar. I want to thank you so much for joining us. We got a couple of minutes left. Was there anything else you wanted to get in that I did not bring up?
Well, the first thing, that I would like to, that we want to ask all of our listeners to do is, spread awareness about the situation, because this is something that many people don't know. Many people don't know that East Turkestan is an occupied territory like Tibet. This is something that we are trying to get the United States government to recognize that East Turkestan, like Tibet, is an occupied territory. We want the international community and the United States government to recognize what is going on in East Turkestan is essentially, at this point, a genocide. It's not just mass human rights violations. It is a legitimate genocide. It is 100% genocide, what's happening in the region, and we need to stop this. We've been saying never again, but yet again and again, it's happening as we speak. So I think that our listeners, the least they can do is spread awareness and invite and call their members of Congress to pressure our administration and our government to stop this. And the United States can pressure the United Nations and other like-minded countries and build a coalition to stop this 21st century genocide.
Salih Hudayar, and if you want to Google search his name, he's with the East Turkestan National Awakening Movement. Salih is spelled S-A-L-I-H. Hudayar is H-U-D-A-Y-A-R. Salih Hudayar, I want to thank you so much. You've really informed us a lot and given us a lot of important information here, too, about a situation that probably a lot of people don't know about yet.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.